Hello, everyone again. It's wonderful to see you. I'm sitting here in my own Zendo, as you can tell here, at home. And I'm going to offer something today because election day is coming up here. Today is Halloween. Today is Halloween, October 31st. So happy birthday to my sister, whose birthday it is today. She's a Halloween baby. And Halloween in 2024 means we're a few days away now from a national election that has a lot of import and a lot of emotional energy around it. And I'm feeling that. I'm sure everyone uh, in this country is feeling that. And I'm sure probably a lot of people outside of this country are feeling that. So talking just a little bit about that today seems skillful. Um, we have some there are Tuesday night talks at the Minnesota Zen Center where I work sometimes, and we were looking for volunteers to find someone to take election night to actually volunteer to do like election night because we knew that you know that was going to be a really uh, big and emotional evening to be giving a talk. The election seems like an obvious thing to discuss. And so I volunteered to do that. And for scheduling reasons and a bunch of other stuff, somebody else ended up getting into that spot. But after I volunteered, I thought, well, I wonder what I would talk about. Maybe I should write a couple of things down. And so I made some notes. And although I won't be giving that talk at the Zen Center in Minneapolis on election night, I thought I'd offer it to you folks, right? And what occurred to me, of course, is the starting place is, I think the thing we all have in common is a shared experience of a lot of anxiety. It's really important to start by acknowledging that that's our present moment experience. Um, that anxiety, I'm sure, has some waves. It has some layers, some different aspects of it for everybody. There's probably some dread or some hopelessness. There's probably some hope. There's probably some excitement. There's probably anger. There's probably the defenses that come up, the impulses that come up in us around really strong feelings, fight and flight, and freeze and avoidance, and all the things that we do. I've heard a lot of people in the past few weeks say they're scrolling their news feed all the time. And I've heard a lot of other people in the past few weeks say the opposite, that they're avoiding it entirely, just trying not to look at it. And so, as meditators, regardless of our tradition, as people who are drawn to self-awareness and are committed to bearing witness with some wisdom and some compassion to the human experience, it's really important that we start there. We just start by acknowledging well, there's a lot of fear, there's dread, there's anger, there's memories of being hurt, there's hope, there's excitement, there's memories of experiences of great change, a change that I thought was terrifying and turned out to be okay. Change that I thought was going to be just great and turned out to be horrifying. Right? This is just our humanity showing up. This is just our humanity arising, at a time of change, and it makes sense that all of our human layers would show up and have something to say. The anger wants to express itself, and the sadness wants to express itself, and the courage is there to meet it. Right? Anxiety wants to be felt and known, and so our storylines, our emotions, the way these things show up physically in our bones and our muscles, are all the painting on the canvas that we are bound by our aspiration as meditators to bear witness to. I will feel the body as it tightens. I'll bring my breath to those tight places. I will notice the motions, the waves, the movements of emotion. I'm going to notice those. I'm going to allow myself to feel them as deeply as I can and not forget that I'm watching something and caring for something that's very important, but also does not define me. Right? I'll be the presence to that movement. I'll notice the storylines. I'll pay attention to the thoughts, the stories, the narratives, beliefs, meaning making, this whole function, right, that tries to organize and categorize and rank and attach value and separate all the things that the brain is so good at doing. We start by just noticing this is how it is. This is how my humanity is responding, right? This is how my humanity is responding. And we also can remind ourselves, of course, we're not alone in this. We're never alone in any human experience, every human experience, of course, we can share with someone else, although we're unique beings. When we discuss or we talk about our sadness or our dread, our excitement, our hope, other people can nod because they know that feeling. They've had that experience. There's nothing new here, actually. Right? The human experience is part of how we connect with one another, of course. And so when we connect more deeply with our human experience, we have a greater possibility of connecting with others. That's just true. And this is across the divide, right? The divide in this case, meaning the partisan divide that we're experiencing in this particular culture at this particular time. If we look really deeply into our experience, we find fear, we find anger, we find needs trying to be met. When we talk with people on the other side of whatever that divide is, we find people feeling anger and fear and wanting their needs to be met. Oh, I see. I see. Different tactic to maybe get those needs met, but very same needs. Right? This is our duty. This is our responsibility, actually. For some people, this is vow, but this is the nature of reflective practice. It's the nature of meditation practice. I will look deeply. I will feel deeply. I will see deeply into my human experience. And I will also see how it connects me to every other human who's had these same experiences. Right? So that's kind of where we start. And I encourage you to do that. Um, I encourage you to do that every night, not just election night, right? I encourage you to do that every night. Every night is election night. Every night the world changes. Every day the world changes. Every morning the world changes. It does. It changes all the time. It's never the same twice. It's always changing. And so I encourage you, stay connected. How does your body feel? What are you noticing? What truth is it telling you? How about your emotions? What are they showing you? How about those storylines? How are they feeding those emotions? What do they go back to? What are they about? What do they tell you about what you've experienced in this life, about how your fears show up, how your hope shows up, right? That's important information. It's good to bear witness to that, right? That's our practice. And so we know that as this specific election night draws near, that we're also not alone in knowing that there are many, many people wanting to figure out a way to help, to figure out a way to adapt to what the world might end up looking like, and what their life experience is going to end up looking like, how to adapt to that skillfully, how to adapt to that lovingly, how to adapt to that with some wisdom and some compassion, right? This is an age-old question. This is not new. It feels very vital, and it feels very urgent, and it feels very vivid, and it feels very kind of technicolor for all of us on October 31st of 2024. But the truth is there's actually a really, really, really old and ancient body of experience that we're talking about here. The ancient body of human experience, human suffering. As storms come and go, as nations rise and fall, as power is given and taken away, as we ourselves experience health and illness, as we experience fame and disrepute, as we experience pleasure and pain, as we experience gain and loss. For those of you who have a Buddhist background or are familiar with the Buddhist tradition, you'll recognize what I just listed are called the eight worldly winds, the winds that go in the opposite directions of fame and disrepute and pleasure and pain and the rise and fall of all things. They're called the winds, and they blow our lives, There's an infinite number of winds. There's an infinite number of polarities that we sit inside of. Um, but we recognize, again, this is the human experience. This is just always gain and loss is always happening, right? Right now, the form it's taking for a lot of us is political division, and we know that's connected to larger issues, climate crisis, environmental disaster, war, starvation, seemingly unending conflict. When we look out the window, um, with the eyes of time, we see October 31st, 2024, and the particular conflicts that we're seeing, the particular environment that we're seeing, the particular um, populations that are in power and the particular populations that are marginalized. And similarly, when we look out the window with the eyes of eternity, which all of us possess, we realize, oh, this is how it has always been. The wrinkle is different now. The stakes are different now. The form it's taking are different now. But this is the story. This is the human story. It has always been thus. There has always been conflict. There has always been injustice. There have always been tyrants. There have always been people who've been oppressed. There have always been people who have more than they need. There have always been people who have starved as a result of that, right? There's always been that. That's just the way that things are. It doesn't decrease its importance, but it's helpful to remember the urgency that we feel in the moment. We come by that feeling, honestly, of course. It is urgent. And it is also part of a very, very, very large body of experience that's actually ancient. The reason I offer that reminder is it's a little bit of perspective. What's happening is both new and not new at all. But I also offer it as a reminder to myself and to all of us. Oh, I bet this is how it felt when that one kingdom in China took over the other kingdom and started murdering, you know, when those explorers turned into conquerors. In my own history, in my own bloodline, if I go back far enough, I'll experience this. I'll find relatives that experience this. This is the human experience. Oh, I know. I can actually feel connected to a much larger body of my own experience and my shared humanity when I remind myself this is the great story. Oh, yes, I am part of a great, great, great story, not just the momentary story. And so I'll offer this short two-line poem from the Chinese poet Du Fu. I've mentioned this poem many, many times over the years. It's something that I think about a lot. It's two lines, so I memorized it in 30 seconds, 20 years ago or something, but it stays with me because it's a brilliant metaphor for not only the meditation practice that we are all committed to doing, but also to the worldly experience of constant transiency and change. Right? It's a brilliant two-line poem. Du Fu reminds us the nation is destroyed, mountains and rivers remain. That's the poem. The nation is destroyed, mountains and rivers remain. And in true Chinese poetry, in all poetry fashion, but especially in ancient Chinese poetry, everything is metaphor and is expected to be a metaphor for many, many things and seen in many different ways. So we can see that as a very literal admonition. Nations rise and fall, actual, literal, political, or physical nations, empires rise and fall. Yeah, that's true. And the landscape upon which those things rise and fall stays the same. Right? The mountain is the mountain. You know, it's true. It works that way. It's beautiful in that way. But it also becomes a metaphor for our experience. The nation, the coming and going of power, the things that were valued, the things that were really, really important, the prominent stories when you were five, your internal nation when you were five is very, very different, I'm sure, than the nation that you occupy now. The things inside of you that are your centrally held values, right? The parts of you that have power, the parts of you that are neglected and oppressed, just the way nations do, is different now, right? It's different now than it was then. That's changing, changing, changing. When we sit in meditation, we notice the thing that has the huge importance The feeling that is really, really big. The story that's really, really compelling oftentimes changes in 20 minutes, 15 minutes, 5 minutes. Poof, right? The nation is destroyed. Just shows up and it does its dance and off it goes. And yet mountains and rivers remain. There's an invitation there. Is there not, to discover, well, wait, what's the mountains and rivers part of me? What's the part of me that doesn't change? Like, what is the base of my experience? What is the landscape in my experience that all the other momentary sensations and experiences are built upon? What is that? Right? This becomes an inquiry into the nature of self, right? Because we know nations rise and fall. We know every nation is created and every nation is destroyed. That's the nature of nations, right? That's the nature of organizations. As Buddha taught, it's the nature of all compounded things. Anything made of other things is assembled and then eventually disassembled, right? Someday the earth won't be the earth. Someday America won't be America. Someday flying clouds then won't exist. Okay, that's just a shape some things take and then they move on and take another shape. This is just how it is. Everybody understands that, right? And yet the invitation in Du Fu's poem, mountains and rivers remain. What's that landscape? What is the thing that doesn't change? It seems relevant now to offer this two-line poem again, to bring this out of the dusty closet I'm so fond of pulling it out of, because it's really important for us to remember huge changes happening as we speak. And in the next couple of weeks, we're going to see something large that's obvious, that's something we can see out of the window, right? Something that'll be right there. And at the same time, it's really helpful for us to remember there is also something that doesn't change in our experience. I'm offering this to you as a meditator, to all of us as practitioners, because we have a practice, right? We're either in the early stages of creating that practice, of trying to get a contemplative life set up, a habit of meditation or a habit of self-witnessing created. We're really wanting to do that. Or we're vets. We're old, grizzled veterans, and we've been doing this for 40 years. We're very, very used to going into that little space in our home and doing our practice, right? But what we do, what all of us do, whether we're new or whether we've been doing this for a long time, when we go into that special little space, whether that's a physical space in our apartment or our home, on a cushion in front of an altar like I have, right? Or whether that's just the cushion that you take down off the shelf and sit on when you face the wall, or your favorite meditation chair, or the pew in your synagogue, or the pew in your church, right? The Zen Center Zendo that you visit. You are putting yourself physically and, much more important, psychospiritually, inside a landscape that's outside of time. That's the point of it. That's why you do it, right? That's why you sit down and you take the posture. That's why any ritual element that you add, that's why you do that. That's why you light the candle, right? Or you offer incense, or you look at the altar. Something that reminds you, I'm here to reconnect to the eternal part of who I am. There is part of me that is a nation that rises and falls. There is part of me that is that. This body is part of that, right? It used to be very little, and then it rose and got bigger and bigger and more healthy and stronger. And then it started its long descent, right? That's the body that I'm occupying right now. It's in the middle of its descent. It's going to get a little bit weaker, right? More tired, older, start to fall apart. The nation will be destroyed, right? The body goes away. And so does the ego. The things that I value, my favorite books, my favorite stories, my favorite songs, going, gone, right? Our humanity is fleeting, ashes to ashes, right? It's beautiful. That's part of the wave when it crashes into the shore. The shape isn't the shape anymore. The story isn't the story anymore, right? That body isn't the body anymore. Oof. And yet, when we sit down, we're also encouraged to remember, oh, yes, there is another part. Mountains and rivers remain. What is my ocean nature after the wave crashes? What is my mountain and river nature after the nation is destroyed? I go into this place every day to remind myself, right? Constant change and that which never changes, eternity, consciousness itself. This is why we do the practice that we do to remind ourselves, oh, yes, both are true. Oh, yes. Oh, right, both are true. Both are true. Right? Without a practice, most of us would forget the eternal part. We would just be caught. We'd be so identified with this body, so identified with this fear about this election in this nation right now. It would become the whole thing. It gets very hot. It gets very tight. It gets very constricted, that experience. It's so defined by fear. It's so defined by anger and constriction. It's so defined by attachment and grasping. Can you see why we breathe and go, right? Of course, that experience is real. Of course, I want to hold it. Of course, I want to be with it. Of course, I want to give that suffering humanity a home in the eternal. But I have to remind myself, oh, right, I am the great space. I am the great space in which that happens. Right? I am the mountains and rivers on which that nation builds itself and disappears. Right. Right. I am the canvas in which the story of that person is painted. I'm the sky in which the weather of my life happens. Okay. The eight worldly winds can just come and go, can just come and go when we realize we're the sky, right? So much of why we sit, so much of why we do our meditation, our centering prayer, our mindfulness practice, our contemplative practice, whatever word we call it, at base, on some level, is to remind ourselves, oh yes, I want to have one seamless field of vision that includes my awareness of the temporality of all things and that they're important in their temporal nature. The weather matters, right? The waves matter. This life matters. The body matters. The emotions matter. And also, yes, of course, the part of my vision that reminds me of that which is eternal. Yeah. Can you feel that this is part of how we can act more skillfully in the world? We can act more skillfully as a wave. We can relate more skillfully to other waves when we remember we're the ocean. That's why we do it, right? That's why we do it. So um, the great Thich Nhat Hanh, the great teacher Thich Nhat Hanh, a name I'm sure we all know, said, "Awaken yourself and others to the reality of suffering in the world. If we get in touch with the suffering of the world and are moved by that suffering, we may come forward to help the people who are suffering. When you look deeply into your anger, you will see that the person you call your enemy is also suffering. As soon as you see that, the capacity for accepting and having compassion for them is there." I took a couple of different quotes from Thich Nhat Hanh and pasted them together because they seem really relevant right now when we're looking at an election. We are aware of the reality of suffering in the world, are we not? A lot of us voted or will vote from that awareness. Our vote becomes a response to the suffering. My vote is about my fear. My vote is about my anger. My vote is about my awareness of justice or injustice, the oppressor and the oppressed. That's the place I am acting from, right? This is very typical. This is actually the place we act from every day. We're not always aware of it, but most of what we say and do is actually rooted in the reality of our suffering, right? And so the awakening that we practice on the cushion, I will become aware of. I will awaken myself and others to the reality of suffering. It isn't about yelling, running down the street, I'm suffering, I'm suffering, I'm suffering. It's true. What it's about is bringing that into view on the cushion, in the chair, in your holy place, in your home. Oh, I see it. Oh, I feel it. I understand its origin. I understand how it moves. I understand its story. I understand its beliefs. I feel its emotions. I notice its constrictions. If I am moved by that, then I cannot pretend that other people who are suffering are fundamentally different than I am. I can't. I can't anymore. I notice that I'm voting from my angry place. I'm voting from a place of righteousness, self-righteousness. I notice I'm voting from a place of rightness. Can you feel it? So is everyone else. So is everyone else, right? That the answer to that awareness isn't to not do it, to not vote, to not participate. No, of course not. Vote. Absolutely vote. The practice, though, is to become aware, oh, I can see the part of me. I can feel the part of me. I can understand the part of me that has that story, that is moved by that suffering. I understand how I was formed in this way. There's my nation nature, my temporal nature. That's my karmic nature, we would say in Buddhism. The part of me that was formed by my participation on the planet, right? So this is why we look so deeply. This is why we have to look very deeply. Oh, I understand this is anger. Oh, this is ancient. It isn't actually just caused by the thing that's occurring in my life right now. It's not caused by a person. It's not caused by a candidate. It's not caused by the fact there's an election happening. It's not caused by a neighbor who has a different sign in their yard. No, this is ancient. This is old. I am suffering, as is the person that I call my enemy. I have to look deeply enough that I can see at least some capacity in me for going, oh, we're having the same experience. The same experience of fear, the same experience of anger, the same experience of grasping and anxiety, of wanting to control. That's really important to see. We don't have to see it perfectly. We don't have to be Thich Nhat Hanh, but we can take his words to heart and at least crack open the door, the possibility of, by connecting to my own suffering, I am open to the suffering of others. There'll be huge suffering no matter how the election goes. Either way, there'll be suffering. Either way, there'll be suffering. Either way, there'll be suffering. That's just true. And suffering cries out for compassion, just like pain cries out for cessation. And we are that suffering. And we are also that which responds to that suffering. Are we not? Isn't that our vow? Isn't that our shared aspiration? I want to be the one who's present to suffering. I want to be the compassionate yes that says, I see that that's happening for you. I'll be in that with you. I'll see that with you. I'll hold that with you. That's okay. That's what suffering cries out for, compassion, to be met with, I see it. I see it, at least empathy, at least, oh my God, yes. I know a feeling that's similar to that. Oh, I can touch that in my own experience. I can imagine it must be really, really hard right now, right? That's our practice. I've heard a number of folks in the past few weeks say that their practice, their meditation, their prayer practice will get a lot easier after the election is done. That right now, all of the noise about it and all of their big feelings about the noise are an obstacle. They're getting in the way of their meditation. It's like noise and it's disturbing my meditation. So I'm really looking forward to the election being done. It'll be quiet again and I'll be able to sit. It's a common perception. I understand that. I get how we can go there, you know. At some point, for all of us, if we stick with the practice long enough, um, those obstacles stop being obstacles. They aren't obstacles anymore. They're just the practice. The obstacle is the path, as the old saying goes. That's it. That's the path. That's the practice. Instead of the election being the obstacle to your meditation, the election is just included in your meditation. It's just, oh, now it looks like this, right? Instead of my meditation containing something else today my meditation includes the election, the story of the election, my anticipatory feelings about it, my storylines, my anxiety, how it shows up in my body, how it shows up in my emotion, how it shows up in my thoughts. Oh, right. That's my meditation today. That's what it looks like, right? It's not in the way of, that's the thing. It's the way it's always been in meditation. The noise that you hear isn't the obstacle to you meditating, it is the meditation. Oh, I can hear the crow outside of my window. My window is open because it's warm. There's the crow. Ugh, so loud. Wish that crow would shut up so I could meditate. Oh, no, wait. My meditation just includes the sound of the crow. That's okay. My meditation just includes the experience of back pain. My back hurts. So instead of, oh, when the back pain goes away, then I'll be able to meditate. Right? Can you feel how that works? We're looking for an experience of peace so that we can meditate, right? And the truth is, no, we are the experience of peace, and we're going to bring it to whatever the experience that we're having is. That's the meditation. Noise can't interrupt your meditation. That's not possible any more than back pain, any more than the election, any more than climate death, any more than a species that's teetering on the edge. It's not in the way. It's the thing upon which to meditate. That's the shape of the wave. That's the paint that's on the canvas. Oh, right. That's what I bear witness to. That's the suffering that I feel. That's the story that I listen to carefully. That's what I'm called to bear witness to. I will bear witness to it. That's my aspiration. That's my vow. I will look. I will see. I will hear. I will feel. So, what that means is that our meditation's never later. It won't be better after the election. Your meditation will not be better after the election. Your meditation won't be better later. There isn't a later. It'll never come. You'll never find it. You'll never experience later. It's just not possible. It has to be now. It has to be now. The only thing you have to drop is the idea that whatever's happening is an obstacle. Obstacle is the idea that we just let go of. You just drop that. Nope, not an obstacle, just the thing that's happening. Right? It's your life. And your life is never later, ever. Right now. So I'm going to wrap up here, but what has been helpful for me, because I'm feeling a lot around the election too, like everybody, a lot of anxiety, a lot of memories coming up in the body, memories, right? Just because there's anger, I get a lot of anxiety and a lot of anger, and that's memory. That's about now. I mean, that's actually happening in our nation right now. And so some of that anger is about now. Some of that memory is about, or some of that anxiety, sorry, is about now. Yeah, of course, that's true. But the truth is, I'm carrying my karma with me everywhere I go, just like you are carrying your karma with you everywhere you go. And I've been alive for all these decades. And this thing that's happening right now, yeah, showed up a few months ago, a few months from now, it'll be gone. This whole thing called the election drama, right? Poof. And yet everything I'm feeling is way bigger than just, can you feel it? There's part of the what that which I carry that's being activated by what's happening right now. Present moment experience activates karma. That's a really old Buddhist idea. It activates the thing that's happened. It activates your history. It activates the way you've been formed. And so a lot that's showing up for me now is memory. I remember because I've had experiences of being really, really scared, of having things change in pretty big ways against my will, right? Things that turned out the way I didn't want them to. I've had a lot of experience with bullies, being bullied, people laughing at suffering, people disregarding suffering, right? I've had experience with things not making sense and yet being touted as truth. No wonder I get activated. No wonder I'm confused, right? Or angry. Ah, you can feel it like, yeah, I've had experience with this kind of thing before, right? Warring factions and divisions in relationships and divisions in families. Lies being insisted upon that were true and they aren't. And you can feel it, right? There's a very young part of us that gets activated. This isn't fair. This isn't true. This isn't real, you know? And so sitting with that becomes a huge part of our practice. And the anxiety about what may or may not happen, regardless of what happens, where I am finding some comfort is some simple, really basic reminders. And so I'm going to offer them to you in case they're of comfort to you too. The point here isn't to take our suffering away. The point here is to remind us we have lots of tools with which to relate and love that suffering. That's all. Because these are the 8 worldly wins. Someone's going to win the election, and the nation is going to take a direction that it takes. That change will happen. And then that change will cause other changes. And then that change will cause other changes. And that change will cause other changes. And in 100 years, we could look back and go, oh, I can see how all these things are connected. But the truth is, they're all connected to everything, everywhere, forever, because that's the truth. Right? So I don't know what's going to happen. No one does. But what I do know is my practice doesn't change, actually. Either way, I'm going to relax and I'm going to pay attention. Relax. Pay attention. That's the whole practice. Relax. Pay attention. No matter what happens with the election, I'm going to go into my room every day. And I'm going to remember what's vital to me. I'm going to remember the essential part of my nature, right? My Buddha nature, my still nature. I'm going to go into my room either way, and I'm going to reconnect with my still point, right? I'm going to reconnect with what animates me, what brings light into my eyes. I'm going to reconnect with that. For you, I'm going to guess it's meditation because that's the umbrella under which we are meeting. But for other people, it might be something else. Maybe they write, maybe they draw, maybe they paint, maybe they drum, maybe they walk, maybe they pray, maybe they, I don't know. To devote oneself to, I will reconnect with the most important part of my life every day is a fundamental spiritual practice. Regardless of the tradition, it is a fundamental human practice. Remind yourself every day what you really are. Remind yourself every day what you really are. Remind yourself every day what you really are. It's more than just a post-it note on a bathroom mirror. It's a practice. There's a ritual. There's something you do with your body. There's something you do with your heart. There's something you do with your mind. There's a whole bodiness to it, whether it's meditation or painting or sculpture. It doesn't matter what the thing is. There's a complete giving. There's a wholeheartedness to, I'm going to remind myself what I really am. All of us have had some version of this experience where time vanishes and you just remember what you really are. I will remember I'm the canvas before it was painted on, right? I'm the sky before the invention of weather. This is my face before my grandparents were born. That's how we would say it in Zen. Show me the face. Show me your face before your grandparents were born. What's the essential? What's the mountains and rivers that are still there after the nation is destroyed? You go into that room and you remember every day, because then you'll reconnect with something vital. You'll remember who you really are. Then you remember how to walk 1 foot in time and space and 1 foot in eternity. That's how you'll walk. 1 foot human, fully human, 1 foot Buddha, fully Buddha, both you. Boom. Boom. This is how we participate. This is how we see. Boom, boom. You'll go into that room and you'll remember, right? The contents of your experience every day of consciousness, right? That's the common ground of all humanity. Your fear is the fear. It's the human fear. So how you treat it matters. Your anger, the anger, that's the common anger. That's the human anger. It connects you with everybody who's ever been angry. So how you treat that anger is really important, right? So no matter what happens with the election, as it always has, pain will always cry out for cessation all over the world. No matter what happens, as it always has, suffering will always cry out for compassion all over the world. No matter what happens, you aren't required to like everyone, but you are required to love them. That's spiritual practice. We're required to shine the light of our awareness on everything. That's what we do. So no matter what happens, no matter what happens, you have your practice. You have your practice. The day after the election, you'll do your practice. It doesn't matter who wins. It literally doesn't matter who wins. I'm not saying it doesn't have impact. I'm not saying it doesn't matter in the worldly sense. It has a great import in the worldly sense. What I'm reminding you of is for your practice, no difference is made. The day after the election, I have my practice. I will pay attention to how I feel. I will pay attention to what shows up in this body. I have my practice. I have my heart. I will pay attention to it. I will relax. I will hold it with as much compassion as I can. I will practice seeing clearly. I will practice loving the person in front of me, regardless. That's my practice. Every day I'll go into my room and I'll remind myself, and I will walk in this world the very best that I can with my human foot and my Buddha foot. That's all I can do. It's of profound import, and it is of profound influence. It is of profound influence because, of course, my experience is the common human experience. And so, of course, how I treat this common human experience is how I treat all of human experience. And no matter what happens in the election, that's what I have. I have it now. I will have it then. You have it now, and you will have it then. You have your practice. You have your heart. You have your breath. 100% human, 100% Buddha. That's the teaching. The election can't touch that. The nation shows up and the nation disappears. And there is your mountain and there is your river. Right there. Nothing can affect that. Nothing can ever, ever, ever take it away. That's who you are. Remind yourself of that. Come back. Relax. Pay attention. Where is your body? Where is your heart? Where is your breath? It's beautiful, right? That's your practice. So I'm going to end with one of my favorite quotes from Eihei Dogen in the Zen tradition. Some of you who are flying cloud Zen folks who frequent our sittings know that we end the evening sittings with this chant from time to time. The evening sitting chant changes. The morning one doesn't. That's always the Heart Sutra, right? But the evening one changes. And this is one of the ones we end the evening sits with from Dogen, and it's one I've come to really appreciate. Dogen says, through one word or 7 words or 3 times 5, even if you investigate thoroughly the myriad forms, nothing can be depended upon. Night advances. The moon glows and falls into the ocean. The black dragon jewel you have been searching for is everywhere. So thank you very much. I appreciate your attention. I wish us all collectively lots of wisdom and lots of compassion as we face this big change together. And as always, if there's anything that I can do to be of support to your practice, please let me know. And I trust that I'll see you again here soon, Flying Cloud. Blessings as you go.